Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Gray Area. Thank you for joining us tonight.
Good evening, everyone. I'm going to open up in prayer. God, I just want to thank you tonight for our first episode of 2020. I ask that your presence be on the line and that you meet everyone's needs that is participating in today's conversation. We ask that you guide our conversation and that you are clear and present and giving us the ability to have an open dialogue that opens our eyes to your perspective. We ask all of this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. So I'm going to go right into just talking a little bit about the gray area. We thank you for taking the time to listen. So the gray area is just the platform that both Tashora and I use to challenge others on their very belief system. Many times our experiences are all different, and it can be hard to consider others and their thoughts and perspectives, especially when we've been conditioned and limited in our scope. So the gray area is a space and time in which we come together. We want to inspire and bridge each other, hopefully in that process gaining insight on heaven's perspective. So we're really excited about our 2020, and we're looking to revamp and really challenge you guys on your perspectives. And we're excited about our conversation tonight. Tashora, you want to go into setting the table?
Absolutely. Again, I just want to welcome everybody back. I hope everyone had a happy new year. And today we are going to be talking about how important fathers are in a daughter's life. And we wanted to talk about this topic because, especially since, we were on social media and we were just seeing a lot of the hashtags saying girl dad, and I think that stems from the passing of Kobe Bryant and his daughter. And, I think it brought up a sub-conversation on how important fathers are in a daughter's life and actually their presence in their daughter's life and how much it impacts it and makes a difference. So today we'll be exploring how important. I don't think, usually our questions are pretty black and white. It's like a yes or no. And I think, everyone can challenge me on this, but I think many would agree that a father is important in any home, in any child's life, to have a father. But the challenge and the question that we're posing today is how important do you think a father's role is in raising a daughter? Okay, so we want to kind of explore how important you think. Is it super important? Not so much. I know there's a lot of single-family homes and, daughters, sons raised in households without fathers. So we want to explore how important do we all feel, how important do we feel a father is in a daughter's life. So, Shanae, what do you think?
So, and, thinking about and preparing for tonight's topic, my perspective, kind of like what I said in the intro, is very limited because my father actually passed away when I was 3. So I grew up in a single-parent household. There wasn't many male figures to really fill that void. So, in considering the question of how important for someone who maybe has not had an opportunity to be exposed to that or have that type of relationship, I wouldn't be able to really determine, how important. And it wasn't until maybe I had my first child I recognized the significance of it. And I still don't know if I understand it entirely. I have 3 daughters, as everyone knows. And my husband is a really great father. And I'm learning as we go, what that presence means and how he's influencing them and shaping them. So, to kind of answer that question, I still feel like my scope is pretty limited, but just seeing it play out with the relationship between my daughters and their father, it's a very special relationship. It's very unique. The things that he pours into them is very different kind of versus what I do in terms of impartation. And so I guess it's something that I'm constantly learning on a day-to-day basis. What are your thoughts?
Well, I guess I'll just go ahead.
Oh, no, so I would say to kind of, summarize my answer, it's hard when you don't know what you're missing, kind of. If you never had a father, it's kind of hard to assess, how important it would be if you never even really had an opportunity. So that's coming from me with having, no father presence.
All right. Well, I guess I would start, and I'm definitely going to tell you like my background with my dad and the males that I've had in my family. But I thought it was really interesting just like doing a little bit of research and seeing how much, how much studies say that men and fathers have an impact in daughters' lives particularly, and how, the presence of a father in a household has changed, they said, significantly, from the 70s to even now. So, one generation ago to even now, they're saying that the fathers are more present, and it's not even just physically present, because sometimes they say fathers could be physically present but emotionally absent in the home. They're saying now in our, right now in our present day, that fathers are more emotionally present as well as physically present. So they have seen a change and a shift in how daughters are kind of how they are, I guess, socializing in the world. And it looks very different as opposed to, a lot less women being able to function. They said women without fathers tend to have more stress. They say they don't socialize as well as girls with fathers in the home. They say they experience a lot more loneliness. Their relationships and who they choose for husbands look very different than those that have fathers. Because I'm sure everybody has heard that daughters pretty much emulate their fathers and the husband and the men that they choose to date and be with for the future. So if you have a father that's present and there versus a father who's probably absent, or even a father that's there but like abusive, they might pick a man that's kind of similar to that. So that was, the study, and I'm sure that's not far-fetched to what we, many of us have heard, because I know I hear that all the time, that a girl picks their father to marry. I always used to hear that. But my experience personally, as I was raised with my father, and I would say a very, very strong and present father growing up. He was there. He would pick me up from school. He helped me do homework. He was very, very present. And not even just my dad. I had my grandfather who was really, really present, my uncle who was really present. And these are men that I still look to, for things. And I think they have definitely impacted me and my confidence and how I interact socially in the world, just because I am very confident because of, my father making me feel. And I read a lot of this stuff, and I know that it has a lot to do with him. My father, my grandfather, my uncle making me feel that I was important. One of the examples and I know I'm talking a lot, but one of the examples that I was, given recently was that I remember one time, and I know I was really, really young, and my father asked me my opinion. I think it was I think it was a paint color, like he was doing over the kitchen, and he asked me like my opinion as like a child, and he took it, he took my opinion, and that meant like a lot to me. So, to me, it showed me how important that I was, that I can come in a room, and even if I don't have anything to say, that doesn't mean that I'm not important or I'm not seen. You know what I mean? So I think that has definitely helped to shape who I am right now as a woman. So
so it sounds like, based on what you're saying, obviously with self-esteem, self-worth, you feel like it's definitely impacted that. And that, I did some research too, and it kind of, they all kind of say the same thing when it comes to that. It even talks about body image, which was pretty interesting.
Oh, I saw that too. Yeah.
And it also, you mentioned romantic relationships, whether absent or not, which was pretty interesting. Now, one of the questions that I wanted to ask you was, I guess, in light of like the Kobe Bryant thing, there's been this hashtag with Girl Dad.
Mm-hmm.
And, it's brought a lot of attention to, fathers, active fathers. What are your thoughts about that?
I think it's really important for a dad to be active. And before I even go on, I want everyone on the line, we didn't mention that. Please press *6. We would love for you guys to participate. We want to hear what your perspective is on the question of tonight. So if you would like to participate, just hit *6 so we can see you. But I think it's super important. I think that, a father is essential in my opinion. And to answer the question, I think it's extremely important in a girl's life because I don't think we realize how much the man that we have as a father, as a woman in the home, is our first example of what a man and a woman, like the relationship, should look like. You know what I mean? And I think they show you how, they show you what love should feel like, what it should look like, whether it's good or bad. I mean, of course, we want positive interaction, but whether it's good or bad as a female, that's what you take on as your norm. Whatever your father, I'm talking about a male-female relationship, is giving you. So, and also as a woman, you look to the relationship between the mom and the dad as well to see what that relationship looks like, to see what you will emulate or pick. And I just think it's super important that I think girls sometimes they struggle. They want to they sometimes they may feel insecure, and I think your dad can do a lot with enhancing that. I used to always say too, like, my girls, whenever I do their hair, I always send them downstairs, and their dad and my son, their brother, will tell them how nice their hair looks. I think that the compliments and just making them feel good about themselves is just super important. And I don't think it always has to come or look like that, but I think sometimes just the presence of like a man. I'll tell you, even growing up, I know my father, I used to see him, he always had the role, and we had just like you have 3 girls, my mom had 3 girls as well, so it was 3 of us in the household. And what I used to see, and I can only speak from my own experience, is how my father portrayed like his role was in the household, where he always wanted to take care, or he was the one that was taking care of us. So it wasn't just like he wasn't just there. He had this active role where he was trying to take care of us. And I know for sure that that's something that I always want, and I do have that. I want somebody who wants to take care of me. That's why we had that conversation last year about chivalry, and I think that goes with a part of what you saw. And if you saw chivalry and you got a chance to appreciate that, then I think you also want to emulate those things, where the man, or you see your father taking care of you and doing all those things. So I mean, I think it has a huge impact on a girl and how she functions in the world. I mean, I just think it's super important. So that's just my take on it.
We want to really hear from everyone else. If you have a different perspective, I wanted to kind of bring up 2 things. So for many who don't know, the Girl Dad was a hashtag that was started as it was like a running theme, I guess, with after Kobe Bryant had passed away, and it kind of just inferences, recognizing, fathers who are actively present, but also one of the definitions I read is actively present to dismantle forces that seek to place limits on what girls can do. And it was in honor of Kobe Bryant because he had such a strong presence in his daughters' lives, and it was pretty public. So, people took that as an inspiration, and from that became this huge recognition or acknowledgement of fathers who are actively present and, really have this special relationship with their daughters. But on the flip side, one of the things that I remember people talking about growing up are, women or girls with daddy issues, and that kind of stemming from fathers who were absent. So, we're talking about how important. I think that this is something that's always been a conversation. I just think sometimes if people don't know if, what they're missing, they may not even realize how impactful it can be of not having a father. And so, it can be very detrimental because based on some of the elements you kind of described, those things are important. So if you don't have someone to kind of pour that into you, where do you develop a sense of self? If you don't have that, especially male presence to kind of help build you up. So, as we're talking about how important it is, just thinking about the lack of it and some of the negative impacts it does cause for women, especially for women who have, my father passed away, so it's a little different than actually having a father who maybe for whatever reason wasn't around or couldn't really be present. I think that kind of fosters a level of rejection that sometimes people end up carrying into their old age of feeling like they're rejected from a parent, someone who was responsible for bringing them into this world. And I have a friend who kind of struggled with that and who still struggles with that. And sometimes they're unable to really resolve it, So just kind of looking at it from that perspective as well.
How old were you when your father died?
I was 3.
Okay.
And my memories before that, some people probably don't believe me, but I actually have I have like a few fond memories, meaning like very clear memories of him, and they were very positive. So, those are things that I 3 years is extremely, extremely a limited time, but I do have those positive memories. I think we have. Go ahead.
Yeah, but do you know? You say 3, and people say you say people would probably think that, but that's weird. But no, would you believe? Like even one of the things that I read today was saying 3, 4, and 5-year-olds when their interaction, some of their positive memories and their identity, like, how they identify themselves as a woman is even cultivated at such a young age, 3, 4, 5. You know what I mean? Like a lot of those things are set. Like you would think that it would be more like in the teen years, and it's really not. So even you having those positive things or even that memory, it
I'll
did
share
mention
like this
that.
one memory that stands out to me, which is kind of weird, but I remember locking myself in the bathroom at 3, and my mom like freaking out, and my dad's like, he used to call me brown sugar, and just the idea of like, he's like, I'm gonna get you out, and he, I remember that as a child or a baby. And I remember, like, how that made me feel like I thought my dad was a superhero because he broke the door down. And so, even though it was such a long time ago, I remember that. And even in that moment, you kind of talk about importance. I know that I was extremely important to my dad. And even in that small, long time ago interaction, it's something that I remember and I hold dear to me. So.
Yeah. That's formative, and see how, because, I think that was, I wouldn't say it's traumatic, but it is kind of like something that is traumatic that will force you to remember him. So that was, I think that's a great thing. That's a great thing. But let's see what the person in the queue has to say. Hi, caller.
Good evening, caller.
You might have to unmute your phone.
Absolutely. Sorry about that.
Okay.
Hi, guys. I wanted to say that this topic is awesome, but it's very difficult to talk about because it's very individualistic, meaning for me, everyone's situation is different, and people get really offended about certain things when you talk about a father, lack of a father, daddy issues, and I've learned that you have to teeter very lightly on it, because what you may say, even though it might be light, may come across very heavy for them because they have not understood that one particular thing. And even though this is what studies say, and this is what statistics says, when you deliver it, people take it as your words and how you feel, and that you're looking at them and you are trying to tell them about their life. So what I'm about to say next, it's very broad, but there's a lot that happens with relationships with fathers. It is a very important relationship, especially with women, because the male in your life, the father who has a part of birthing you, has the connection to you, your DNA, he teaches you how a man should treat you, your foundations, and what you should expect and what you should be given. And he also supports, protects you. He builds you up the way he expects you to be. And a lot of women that don't have that experience, they gain it through other people, meaning just like what Shanae said, when her dad wasn't present, but he actually was, because she remembers his memory and that he was her superhero. She wouldn't accept someone in her life that wouldn't make her feel like she was like amazing, like he was another entity of that, because those things are instilled. But there's different type of fathers. There's fathers who are present and who are dominant, who teach you things, and there are fathers who are absent, who sometimes occasionally come around. And there's a lot of women that have a lot of issues, loneliness, a lot of personality disorders, a lot of mental disorders, a lot of sadness, depression, because of that, seeking that relationship with that person. It's constant. And they don't realize that they do it until they sit down with someone and they can say, do you think that that's the lack of your father, or the lack of a relationship with your father? Do you correlate it and let that person pull it out? Because you saying it, it's like an attack.
Yeah.
I hope you guys can understand what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, no, I do. I have a question for you, though, because a friend of mine shared with me not too long ago that her father, not that he was like a father who was physically absent, but he was emotionally absent. Like, he was never, like, he'd be in the house, and she said she doesn't even remember him actually even having like a conversation all the way with him. He was there most of the times. When he would speak to them, he would speak through her mom. Like, so it wasn't like he was there, but he wasn't there. He stayed in his room. If he was in the living room, he was watching the show, but it wasn't like he interacted with them. Like, what do you think the effect of that is? Because they're there, but obviously they're teaching you something. They're teaching you something else too. So there's fathers, we say absent and not absent, and we think it's always like a physical thing. But what happens when it's an emotional thing? Is what I'm saying.
Oh, it's major. It's major, because what happens is I'm just speaking general. It's not particular to every situation, but most times women tend to meet men and marry men and date men that are just like their fathers. And you'll hear it. Oh my God, he reminds me of someone. And you don't even realize that familiarity that you feel with that person is that same thing that you are trying to fix in the relationship with your father. And it ends up that same situation is present in your life again. That the man that you date, he doesn't even hear you. He doesn't, because you're used to it. You don't even realize it's innate. It's like, okay, well, I know how this feels already, and I already compensated for that. And you try to fix it in that relationship.
Right. but it's familiar, so you go back to it.
It's familiar, so you go back to it. We can all pinpoint something in our relationships with men, our marriages, that is very familiar to our fathers. And most women don't want to acknowledge it, but it's there. It's just so familiar. It takes someone else to draw that little component out of you to get it out. And a lot of men they gravitate to a woman that has daddy issues because guess what? They've been in abuse relationships. They're vulnerable. They're mentally, physically abused by their own fathers or their mothers, so they gravitate to that woman. So you realize that history replays itself until you sit down with someone and you break that cycle.
Yep. Very true. Very true.
Well,
thank you.
Caller.
Thank you, caller.
Thanks for having me.
Well,
sorry about that. But, I want to just add that just like the caller said, you see that even in abusive relationships, too. And they always say, and I know there's a study, too, that I also read where it said most of the women that are in, or people, I should say in general, that are in abusive relationships have experienced it in the past, have seen it in a previous relationship. So usually, like the caller just said, it's familiar. So usually we go back to it, whether it's good or bad. So.
Well, thank you, caller, for your insight. I agree. It's such a touchy subject. But I think part of the world that we live in, we kind of have to deal with it. Like, even when people were putting their girl-dad photos, and some of my friends were, posting pictures of their dad, like, I don't have that. So, even growing up and not having dad to come to the Father's Day lunch at school, it was like a harsh reality that I had to face. And so, and I'm just bringing it up because it does bring up feelings, for those who may not have such positive relationships with their dad, or may not have, some of the things that we talked about, that this is part of it is, that absentee, you still feel it, because it's just so part of society, Father's Day comes up and the commercials, like, these are real feelings that people have to deal with, whether they acknowledge it or not. It's something that you think about. I think we have another caller.
Yes. Can you let them in for me, please?
Sure.
Okay.
Good evening, caller.
Hey, this is Jay from Queens. Can you guys hear me?
Yes. Hi, Jay.
Yes. Jay.
Just wanted to make a comment on the topic. I think that good fathers play an important role in the development of a daughter. I think that bad fathers also play a development in the life of a daughter as well. And it's always going to be subjective based on the relationship and how it's seen. But I know just from observation, one, as a father myself, two, and then seeing how my father interacted with my daughter, with my sister, and the type of confidence that she had from being a little girl and just always feeling like she could dominate and take over and do what she needed to do because she had the support of her mom, of course, but then knowing that my dad was always going to be there is just something that spills over even in her life right now. And a lot of her confidence and attributes and positive ways that she carries herself, it relates directly to that. And now, me being a father and having daughters myself, I look at it like the importance of that relationship is key. It's different when they know that their dad is going to be there. Knowing that I'm going to have their back, knowing that I want to know what's going on with them, hearing them out. And I look at it like the development of what they want in a man. And this stuff starts very early, of knowing who they want to be around, who they don't want to be around, the confidence, their self-esteem. I just see it pouring out. So it's all full circle for me. And I just think that, I can't speak for everyone's circumstance, but I just think that it's important to, have the standard of a good father, because many times dads can be in a house and they can have no connection whatsoever at all. Like it's just, a warm body. But that makes a difference, but it's still not the same as an active father playing a role in a child's life, knowing that they're invested. And like even when I go to my children's school, like it's important. I want their teachers to know. I want their friends' parents to know that their father is active in their life, that they have someone who's going to ride for them and cover them and just stand in the gap from a protection standpoint and from a support standpoint.
Yeah. I think that's important. I really do. I think that's super important. And you don't realize that as a young girl, you know how they always say, like, the father is the one that does all, like, has the strength and the discipline, and their voice, like, like emulate, like their voice matters to the kids. When you hear your father's voice, it's like everybody's still, and if you have that authority as a child, that your father's in the room, so now you have the floor. He's going to make sure you have the floor. That goes with you all the way through life. Whether he's there or not there anymore, as you get older as a woman, you have that confidence that's built in when, dad is setting the stage for you as a young girl. I think it's so important, and I agree with what you're saying.
Well, thank you, Jay. I think that I liked his comment about just the presence in even their school, and the presence of allowing people to know that, that they have a father, definitely makes an impact.
Yeah, that confidence piece, I think, is really, really, really big when it comes to girls, because, sometimes I think that self-esteem, confidence thing is really big for us, because, it's like we're trying to always fight for what to do, and you'll see a lot of those women that have the dad that kind of lets them, like, don't worry, I got everybody else. You do your thing while I got your back. I'm protecting you. You kind of have a footing, and you have that confidence because you're used to standing out there, So I think a father's role is just super, super, super important. And, one thing that you brought up before was, what do you do for those kids or, the people, the daughters that don't have a father for whatever reason, whether their father passed away or their father's absent. What do you do, especially now that we're all aware and how important it is for many things developmentally as a young girl? What do you do as a mom to try to still kind of get it in when sometimes your circumstances don't allow it? What do we do?
I can offer 3 perspectives. So I can offer the spiritual perspective, a practical perspective, and what was the other perspective? I don't know. I'll just start there. So practical perspective of what my mother did was she got me into a mentoring program. And so through that program, I met some really awesome male figures who definitely helped shape my pathway into adulthood. It was called the One-to-One Mentoring Program. My mother was a very loving person. She often overdid it in terms of just trying to make sure that she could provide for me in many ways. But I think the mentoring program, the full-on support, was key for me. So that's like the practical, some practical things of maybe trying to find a network outside of, your family network. If you don't have that, they have, what is it called? There's a few mentoring programs. I'm sorry, it's skipping my mind, but there's a few. So
I think I know which one you're talking about. The one with Denzel on all those.
Yes, sorry, I can't think of the name.
Oh my gosh, I know exactly what you're talking about.
Big brother, big sister. I was actually very I wanted to kind of be involved and maybe start in a mentoring program just because I realized and recognized the importance of it. So that was one aspect of it. Mm-hmm. I definitely think that my spiritual relationship has helped. In Psalm 68, 5-6, it talks about, he's a father to the fatherless, a defender of widows. He's a God in holy dwelling. He sets out in lonely and families, etc. And so I definitely, feel like my relationship with God has helped me to fill in some void. But just even going from like a clinical standpoint, I think kind of like what the caller Tommy was alluding to, some people aren't ready to kind of face some of those harsh realities, but I think that once you are in a place where they're seeking counseling and just acknowledging that this is what it is, you can then kind of move forward and recognize, because if you don't feel like you have a problem or you don't connect the dots that maybe I'm behaving this way or maybe I'm acting out in this way or maybe, things are not coming in alignment because of these issues that stem from an absentee dad or, connected to that, then you're never going to be able to kind of get to that destination or what was designed for your life. So it definitely has to be a place of acknowledgement, seeking counseling, talking to someone are some of the steps I would say from a clinical standpoint. From a spiritual standpoint, I definitely feel like getting closer to God and recognizing that He kind of fills those voids. I really do feel that way.
I agree.
He has definitely filled those areas. When I feel, sad or lonely as a kid, I would just kind of pray because I was in church a lot and the mentoring program. So that would be what I would offer, those 3 elements.
Yeah. I don't know. I think, for me, the only thing that really came up is if it's not his father, it could be an uncle or a grandfather or, maybe somebody in your church that you see is taking a real interest in your child that you respect and, that but I just always think that is just super important. I think the presence of father in a daughter's life is super important. And we already clearly stated through our conversation, the impacts that it has. So, and we're trending to be better than our past generation. So that's a great thing. That's a really, really great thing. So I think this was a great conversation. I think it was a great conversation.
It's a hard conversation because, for some of us who don't have, it's hard to kind of accept, maybe that's some of the reasons why, you may not be confident in certain areas, maybe stem from that. But I think it's something to kind of acknowledge and recognize. So you can kind of work through it, So I hope that through this conversation, whether you have a father or have the experience of having a father or not, that this kind of causes you to kind of think about how to navigate from this point.
Yeah. So I just want to thank everyone for tuning in to our first show of 2020. I am so excited about the Gray Area's future. We will be taping episodes for our podcast, which is now on iTunes, as we mentioned, of the closing of last year. So you can listen to all the past episodes, and we'll be taping on the first and third Wednesday of every month, and we need your participation because we need everyone's perspective. So we thank you. Don't forget to follow us on all social media platforms, Instagram, Facebook, just to stay abreast of what we're doing and what the topics are. And if you have any ideas for future topics, please, please, please let us know. And we just thank you all for supporting us and for listening. We'll talk to you soon.
Have a good night, everyone. Thank you for tuning in.